the flight of deities on a mass scale begins with Aurangzeb's order of 1669. In 1669, Aurangzeb gives an order for the destruction of temples. Now, there is a mass flight of the deities because, the temples were huge structures. There was no way that an ordinary priest or ordinary devotees could protect that temple. They could protect what was most sacred to them in the temple, that was the image. So in 1669, when Aurangzeb gives orders for the destruction of temples, we have well documented cases of mass flight of deities from Mathura, Vrindavan, Braj area. And what was the place that they could go to immediately? They could go to Rajasthan, because Rajasthan was not an area where the Mughal forces could immediately enter given the terrain of that area. And most Rajput rulers were sympathetic to these deities because many of these temples had been constructed by Rajput rulers. So one of these temples, you're talking about Shri Nathji. Now I have to give you some background history of Shri Nathji. It's a very, very interesting history that the image of Shri Nathji, the full name is Shri Govardhan Nathji. And this image was supposed to have actually been buried at some place. Why was it buried? Perhaps in an earlier attack, the devotees buried that image. Now, the thing is that when a leader was in the Jharkhand area, Shri Govardhan Nathji came to him in a dream and said, "Go to Braj. My murti is there. Find that image and resume the worship." So that image is found and the worship begins. So when Aurangzeb's order of 1669 comes, then the devotees run away with that image. That image of Shri Govardhan Nathji is now popularly known as SHRÍ NATHJI. Now, where do they run with the image? Can you imagine the courage of the priests and the devotees that for 2 years they hide the image in a house in Agra, which is so close to the Mughal capital. So for 2 years they hide the image in the house of a devotee in Agra. And more astounding, we have record of 3 or 4 Hindu kings actually quietly visiting that house and paying homage to Shri Nathji. Now, when they feel confident of moving out, they take the image to Kota, to Kishangarh, and they're trying to, escape with the image intact. So that journey of that image has been chronicled in an account written in Rajasthani dialect, which has recently been translated into English, which records that from here, it went here, it went here, it went here. And then they said, we will finally take it to Udaipur. Because, Mewar had the history of resisting the Mughals. And Mewar was not so easy to access. So they said, we will take it to Udaipur because the Rana will protect us and the Mughal armies cannot reach. And the Rana actually offered a large body of troops to protect that image when the image was entering Rajasthan. But 40 kilometers before that image reached Udaipur, the cart in which the image was traveling got stuck in the mud. And the priest said that means that the god wants to stay here. So they constructed a small makeshift temple, and later the shrine that we see today, the Shri Nathji, temple at Nathdwara. And since we're discussing this particular sampradaya, there were 9 important images in this sampradaya. But apart from Shri Nathji was 3/5 human height. The other images were a few centimeters in height, that's all. And when the attacks began in the time of Aurangzeb, these images were concealed in the turbans of temple servants, because the images were a few centimeters tall. And in Rajasthan, that tradition of wearing huge turbans is well known. So many of these small images were hidden in the turbans of temple priests. Can you imagine that era? It's so difficult to visualize that people were ready to risk their lives to protect their deities. And so, apart from these images, there are so many. There was a temple that was built by the devotees of Sri Chaitanya. So they also found the image. And then when Aurangzeb's orders come, they also run away with that image. From 1669 till 1739, I think, that image took that much time to reach Jaipur, where you can still find it instated and worshipped in a temple there. So, I mean, it is so difficult to imagine that this is the way we sacrificed. I mean, imagine a person who's running away with the image. He has no regular income. We don't even know how they survived for decades and decades, always on the run, escaping Mughal troops and Mughal armies. So this kind of dedication to our heritage is something that we should recall and pay our tribute to our ancestors.